Well, up next, let's turn our attention over to the grain markets. And joining the show this week is DTN's Todd Hultman. Here's our conversation from Wednesday. Todd, always great to have you here on the program. Want to open up with a question, I guess, when it comes to harvest in your neck of the woods. You're living up in South Dakota. How are things progressing there?
Yeah, well, not too different than what you're seeing in Nebraska, Bryce. Corn harvest is roughly half done at the moment. Almost all the soybeans are out. The crop progress report said 90% on Monday. So they're trying to get those soybeans out, of course, before any rain or winter storm blows in. So not too different from what you're seeing in Nebraska. And overall, things are going very well. And most comments I'm hearing are that the corn crop is coming out of the field better than expected. They're quite surprised given the rough, dry stretches they had. I think they've had a little more rain than what you saw in Nebraska this year, so they're probably going to fare a little better that way. On soybeans, reports seem mixed, and it's a little tough to get a handle of what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the markets now. It's changed quite a bit since our last broadcast. As we begin on the corn side, things fell apart a little bit. We were at the $5 mark when it comes to December corn, but what happened, Todd?
Yeah, well, just last week, there were some building concerns among traders about the weather conditions in Brazil and Argentina. And of course, it's very early in the season. They're just starting to get the first corn crop planted in Brazil, just started planting in Argentina. Conditions have been drier than expected in Argentina, and central Brazil was a little slow in getting its normal rainy season type rains. Just with this week, that forecast has really changed, Bryce. There's better rain in the forecast now expected for Argentina the next 2 weeks. They're probably going to see some nice 1-inch rains, which will help get them going and get better conditions for those early crops. And in central Brazil, we're seeing 1 to 2 inch amounts in the forecast, and a little more rain pushing up toward the northeastern states where it's also been dry. So just this week, it's really taken a bearish turn as far as the prices go, especially on corn.
Kind of a two-part question here on the topic of corn for you, Todd. When it comes to South America, are all eyes looking down there when it comes to the markets here domestically? And if that's the case, where do you see this corn market heading?
Yes, well, it's a combination, but yes, I would say South America's got the big attention this week and probably will in the next couple months ahead. But of course, the reason South America is important to us, Bryce, is because they're the main competition for our export business. Now, our exports are up a little bit from last year's pace, but that's not really anything to brag about. Last year's pace, we had a very slow start. The good news is the river problems don't seem to be causing a problem. At least at this point, we've had good movement of soybeans down the river, and probably won't be much of a problem when corn starts to move either at this point. Also, that rain we're supposed to get in the forecast this week ought to help the water levels on the Mississippi River. But it's a combination of what kind of demand we're going to see this winter and how those South American crops do, because in both cases, we're looking at big crops of both corn and soybeans, especially from Brazil, but also Argentina adding on top of that in 2024 if weather cooperates.
Yeah, you bring up soybeans there, Todd, and that's where I wanted to ask you next. Is it I should say we did find some support similar to how we did in corn for the soybeans leading into last week, but that changed as well, both following a pretty similar trend. Is it South America weather driving the soybean market, or is there some other factors playing in there too?
Yeah, there is a mix of factors there, Bryce. And the big difference between corn and soybeans this year is we're going to have a big carry out of corn stocks the way things are looking. But soybean stocks remain extremely tight here in the U.S., expecting 220 million bushels of ending stocks in the new season. That's the lowest in 8 years. So we have this window of bullish price opportunity in soybeans between now and whenever Brazil's next soybean crop arrives. And right now, it's penciled in at a 6 billion bushel crop. So obviously, that's a lot of soybeans, which tend to start to be harvested in January. And we start seeing the price effects of that sometime in February. Sometimes it can go as late as March. But that is definitely the competition and the concern keeping a lid on an otherwise very bullish situation outlook we could have for soybean prices. So here we are trading just above $13 on the January contract in soybeans. If we didn't have this big Brazil crop looming over us, that could easily be a 14 or 15 dollar prize.
All right, Todd, well, let me give you the final word here on this week's broadcast. Your thoughts on these markets? Any particular advice you want to leave with producers today?
Yeah, well, we've just come off of 2 very good years of tighter supplies, higher prices, and now we're transitioning in the case of corn to more supplies. But more importantly, we're seeing more competition from the world for our grain crops on all fronts. So we're seeing big crops from South America on corn and beans. We're seeing a big crop from Russia, keeping our wheat prices down. It's a tough world looking ahead when I look forward to the crop prices. So I would say, don't stay too long with this year's corn or soybean price. I think you're going to have better luck this winter trying to get some appreciation out of storing soybeans than you are corn. And I know that'll probably make people bristle because they love to store corn, but the corn outlook is not so good looking forward right now.
All right, Todd, well, we appreciate your take here on Market Journal. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bryce.